So from upcycling in fashion, we further continue looking after the environment this morning here in your Feel Good Breakfast Show. And it's also been said that education holds the key to the future. And that also means that environmental education should be considered as one of the most important and relevant needs of our day. Now, Devan Valenti and Simon Atlas are two very inspirational South Africans who are hoping to make a difference and encourage positive change. They published a book called Green is Not a Colour, which focuses on environmental education and environmental issues that we face, as well as sustainable solutions to these problems. And we have them right here on our studio balcony this morning. Devan, Simon, thank you for joining us this morning. I just saw the book over there, picked it up, and I mentioned it's a solid book. There's a lot of information in there. But quickly, let's talk about, we know the fact that South Africa is currently facing a drought. It's hitting the farming communities, the poverty-stricken areas as well. But what are, Simon, some of the environmental issues that we are facing throughout the world today, and what are the possible solutions, if there are any?
Well, you're right. We are a water-scarce country, and we are facing huge water issues at the moment. And I think it's becoming more and more important that we become more aware of the ways in which we use water and ways we can reduce our water intake. Water-saving technologies such as rainwater tanks, grey water systems in our homes, as well as reducing our meat intake and buying food that's in season will go a long way to helping us conserve this precious resource. Yeah. A further big issue that we're facing is the unsustainable nature of our transport systems. Motorized vehicles contribute to about 20% of all greenhouse gas emissions, which is hugely damaging to the environment and affects our health. And so finding more sustainable solutions to our transport problems is going to be a huge challenge in the future. But we have great technologies coming about, such as electric cars, which release zero emissions and can be powered using renewable energy means such as solar power.
Yeah, and it's just an issue of, for especially like electric cars to become affordable,
Exactly.
to the majority. Now, both you and Simon come from design-orientated backgrounds. You come from architectural background. Devan, on that side, you're thinking about green building experience. That's your field of expertise as well. What role do you think design plays in fostering, environmental sustainability? If you talk about, buildings and greening up a city.
I think design is fundamentally about problem solving, and I think a great example of this and of sustainable design is the High Line project in New York City. Yeah. The High Line is an old railway that was raised above the ground and ran the major length of Manhattan. And since the 1980s, it was decommissioned and became a bit of an eyesore in the city, and many people wanted to be removed. While others considered the amounts of resources and energy and human effort they went into creating the High Line, thought it could be reappropriated for a new use. And so through some creative ideas and design processes, it was decided to convert the High Line into a public park with natural vegetation and walkways for the city inhabitants to use. And the project's been a huge success. It's one of the main attractions in New York City now. It's created a new green strip in the city. It has amazing views. It's reduced the heat island effects and added biodiversity, and did this all while using the same infrastructure instead of building something new from scratch.
But it really comes down to education and just a creative way of thinking. Now, Devan, on that point, what do you think are some of the problems with environmental education in our society, specifically in South Africa today, and what should we be doing to change that? Because, like we said, we're looking towards the youth to kind of change, the way forward and think creatively.
So I think it's important to note that education by its very nature evolves and adapts with the times. Just a few decades ago, the idea of teaching Mandarin or computer programming to school kids seemed far-fetched. And yet, in our globalized world today, we're teaching this at elementary level in many cases. And I think environmental education, for the most part, has failed in this regard. The very fact that it's still considered to be a subsection of other fields of study like geography or natural science in and of itself is a problem. I think a second problem we find with environmental education is that for the most part, it neglects to inform people of the abundance of opportunities associated with becoming sustainable. There still exists a stigma in society whereby sustainability is perceived to be an inconvenience or a sacrifice. And what we try and advocate throughout the pages of our book is that you certainly can achieve a level of sustainability whilst at the very same time enhancing your quality of life. And if I can just end off with the youth, Simon and myself are fervent believers in engaging with the youth. At the end of the day, the youth are going to be the key decision makers of the future, and therefore, it's critically important that we use education, which is our best bet at bringing about positive change to society in order to equip them for the future.
And that is what we need to do. I mean, if we all want to live happily ever after, you know, this is the focus. We need to look after our environment. Gents, thank you so much for coming through. Thank you for the hard work that you put into the book. Green is not a color. Get your hands on a copy and start educating yourself in terms of what you can do to look after the environment. Right now, let's quickly find out what's still ahead on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. Here's Leigh-anne.